Thank you very much for coming to today's panel on business, Chinese business, or China in the business world. Actually, we are waiting for 3 panelists. One is not going to make it, I know, but the other 2 probably are hoping to get to know where to park, how to get to the student center. But since time is already 2:05, so let's start. If you come, that would be great. Otherwise, we have very good panelists who can take care of the. Hello, Dr. Thanks so much. This is an economic-focused panel or forum that we intend to keep it for probably regularly for several semesters from now. And we really want to thank Mr. Adam Kohu, who is in our audience right now. He's a very caring gentleman who supports, who cares about the business world, especially about Chinese business in Omaha and the rest of the world. So we would like to show our appreciation in public to Mr. Adam for his caring about this kind of discussions among business persons, among international, academic leaders about what's the future of China, about what's the future of China-U.S. relations, things like that. So the title is very obvious. It's called China is in the business world, and we have lots of things to talk about it. So we are thinking of having this kind of panel in the future focused on separate topics like environment, like the pollution, population, like business ethics. So today is the first time that we have this forum and then initiate the determined project in the future to work on the side of the business world from academic field, and also to see how much we can contribute to the understanding of the people between China and the United States, and between Asian and Americans. So this is a very important beginning. We have the panelists here, so in order to make it very personally available to everyone, so I'm going to ask each panelist to say briefly something about themselves, and then they can, during their self-introduction, make a statement of their opinions regarding China in the business world. And then I'm very grateful that I have my class in political science 316, Politics and Government of China, in the audience. And then some of you have raised very, very good questions, and the panelists have already got a copy of your questions. So in particular, I will ask you to voice your opinions and raise the questions to our panelists. So starting from Marisa?
Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Marisa Ring. I'm with the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. I'm the International Business Development Manager for that organization. Part of my job is to first help Omaha companies with any trade issues that they may be having, importing, exporting. The second part is recruiting international businesses who are looking at the United States to bring them to Omaha and create jobs in Greater Omaha in our community as opposed to somewhere else in the United States. So it has been my privilege while working in this position to travel to China quite a bit and work with Chinese clients as we try and recruit them to Greater Omaha. We have had success. Easyway International was the first investment into the Greater Omaha area, and they are out in La Vista. And at the same time, Greater Omaha companies such as Gallup, such as Valmont, have established facilities, offices, and manufacturing facilities in China as well. For us, for me at the Chamber, it's important to look at opportunities with Chinese businesses because we want to start now making people aware of Greater Omaha, making people aware of Nebraska, so that as investment builds in the future, we've established that groundwork that lets them know that Greater Omaha is the right place for their business. And we see a lot of potential opportunity in the future. I will actually be going to China in a couple weeks for another business recruitment trip and hope to have success there as well. And one other piece I would mention is I'm also on the board of the Omaha Sister Cities Association, and Omaha and Yantai are sister cities. And one thing that relationship has really tried to develop into is a business relationship, an economic development relationship, so that we can tie the companies in both of our communities closer together through business as well. So that might be my 5 minutes, but thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, please.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Jennifer Zhang. I will start with my background a little bit, and then I will also talk about what I do. So I originally from Shanghai, China. 13 years ago, I immigrated from China to U.S. And I lived, after graduate from college, I lived in Hong Kong for 3 years. Mainly at that time is lots of U.S. Fortune 500 company. They looking for opportunity investing mainly in China. So my job at that time is helping Fortune 500 company, find a facility and everything in China. So allow me to have the opportunity, 15, 20 years ago, travel back and forth to China, Hong Kong, to understand both culture, people, how they do business. So about 15 years ago, and then my largest customer, Honeywell, they really like how I do for the Hong Kong company. They tried to recruit me. So 2 years later, that was 13 years ago, I started work for them. I first landed in Troy, Michigan. So I work for this big corporation. Mainly is also bridge the business between China and U.S. So for another opportunity come 10 years ago in 2003, I moved from Troy, Michigan to Fremont, Nebraska, so 20,000 people. So imagine from Shanghai, China, 22 million, then Hong Kong, 11 million is cosmopolitan, big city. So I consider myself as always a big city girl. So then I landed in Fremont, Nebraska, 20,000 people. I just love it. People just so nice. I go to post office, they give me a big hug, and everybody seems just so welcome of me being a foreigner there. So. I just thought, my dream is I always want to travel the world, and I wanted to go back to my, hometown China to visit. No big corporation gave me that opportunity, so I just thought I want to do something myself. So in 2005, I started my own business, continually still doing the same business now. Is I started JZW International. I'm owner of the company. The product I sell is a roofing nails. At first, when I tell people I sell nails, people think I'm sell this finger fake nails. I'm an Asian woman, So I said, oh gosh, I need to correct my English a little bit. And so I start saying I'm selling roofing nails. So people get really curious, how you get into that business? So what I always enjoy to share the story is that when I try to identify what kind of business I can do, what kind of product I can do, I strongly believe between China, to U.S. today or next 50 years, we can continually do lots of, business. So, but I went to one trade show. Two very successful businessmen were saying, we just love Chinese nails. 90% of the nails is from China. So I engaged the conversation. I say, sir, what kind of nails? So they gave me two coin roof nails. So I brought back to China to show my dad. My dad has always been my business mentor. He's in the business. He's a former government official in China. So he said, oh my gosh, my best friend owns nail factory. So we went to this factory. It's a huge, 10,000 employee. I learned how to produce the nails and just got the price and everything. And so I started sell from one container in 2005, and now it's 400 containers a year. So make a living. But because I'm doing this travel back and forth, I get a great opportunity to know Marisa, that will also focus on the business between China and economic, bring more business to Omaha. So then I also work with Nebraska Economic Department very well. So unofficially from 2005 to beginning of 2008, I helped the state in Omaha for good of my heart. And the beginning of 2008, they said, "Oh, Jennifer, you're doing so much. We really want to focus China market." So they gave me a contract. So I'm the representative for state of Nebraska, promoting Omaha, promoting Nebraska to China. Hope attracted to more business into China, into Nebraska. Meantime, help Nebraska company export more product and how to go to China market. So I always say sell nails is just my job, but I live in Omaha. Omaha is consider my home. I'm really passionate about promote Omaha, promote Nebraska to Chinese people. So that's what I have been, doing. And later on, we can take more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Dr. Yu, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Birud. I'm from Nanjing University of the Arts. I'm visiting scholar here now, working with the AsianWorldCenter. And I would like to say Nanjing University of Arts is a university of comprehensive arts with different disciplines, including art, graphic design, and dance, theater, and also drama, and different disciplines. And we have about a number of students of 10,000, and we offer programs in both undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD programs. And my personal background is American literature, and I'm very honored to be invited by Dr. Zhang to come to the U.S. and work with AsianWorldCenter. And I would like to say my major responsibility in Nanjing University of Arts is to initiate the international exchange programs to establish partnership with different universities around the world. And actually, there have been a close connection between Creighton University with Nanjing University of Arts. We have invited Dr. Fred Hanna from Art Department to give a workshop and also to present his symphony in our concert hall, and many of students enjoyed his piece. And also, we have invited Creighton University have invited many of our professors to give art lessons to your students. And also, we are very happy and honored to develop a new program, which is called East-West program, a master's degree program, which is a kind of comparative studies program. And we hope that through our joint efforts, we can let people from both countries know more about each other's culture and people, and including the business or the commercial things. Well, actually, education cannot be called as kind of business, but according to my experience, I think that there are certain similarities between business negotiation and the process of having discussion with different universities from different cultures. So I think there may be something that I can say about China in business world. And since I've been living in China for about more than 30 years, so I think I have something that we can share together about China's current situation, its economic policy, and its future, and its role in the general world. I think there will be many things that we can talk about. And I would like to take this chance to thank Dr. Zhang for inviting me to come here, and I'll be happy to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yu. Dr. Sindhav, please.
I am Birud Sindhav. I am marketing faculty at the University of Nebraska at Omaha in the business school, and I teach a class that is about doing business in China. I have been to China 3 times last year. Once I went on my own, and then I went for business consulting, and then I took my students, and again I'm getting ready to go there in a couple of months. And I'm originally from India, and what I bring to the table is a perspective of an outsider. who lives in United States, but who has lived his major part of his life in one of the developing nations. And I am fascinated about China. It's an enigma. It was an enigma more than it is right now for me, because I did try, understand a little bit of it during my past visits. But it's just the Himalayas that is between India and China. Yet these two cultures, which are Asian cultures, they are so different. And as a business school faculty, I saw that there is a demand from employers in this great city for business graduates who have exposure to China, and we didn't have a course that was about China. So that's the reason that I decided to offer this course and also educate myself about doing business in China. And I'm really thankful to Dr. Zhang for inviting me here, and I'm looking forward to having conversation with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Florick. I worked at United States Strategic Command down in Bellevue. I do nuclear policy as well as presidential policy. Prior to that, I worked space policy amongst a number of other issues. Essentially, our role with China is twofold. First of all, it's how do we better cooperate? How do we engage with China, not only their military, but how do you engage with their government as well as their business world? And the second thing, and obviously this gets back to nuclear policy as well as presidential, larger, President Obama's shift to the Pacific and those sorts of things. How do we address China's growth? How do we counterbalance that? What do we end up having to do, or what do we need to do in that respect? So those are really both the carrot and the stick approach to my role in terms of China. So,
Thank you, Davis.
Professor Wingender, please introduce
Are we standing
yourself.
here? Okay. My name is Dr. John Wingender. I'm a finance professor here at Creighton University. I am also chair of the Department of Economics and Finance. I did come straight from class, and I did talk too long at class, and I did have students talk to me after class, and that's kind of one of the Creighton mottos here that we have. The students kind of always come first, and so I walked as fast as I could. I probably sweat the whole rest of this time here while I grade your papers. Am I saying my China involvement here? We kind of two educational aspects of this. I've been teaching at Peking University in Beijing for the last 11 years. I've taught approximately 20 courses, advanced finance and corporate finance, and a seminar in investments. I just imagine 11 years ago talking about capital markets in Beijing to this emerging economy. It's been quite spectacular. Peking University is known as the Harvard of China, and the students that we get there are really top flight students. And actually, my big experience has been they're very, very interested in finance. They want to be in class, much like you students, I think. They're very excited to come to class and really get their tuition's worth out of each class that I have. I would say the first time I was in China and taught, they asked, instead of starting at 9 o'clock, could you start at 8 o'clock? The same one class. Could you, instead of ending at 12 o'clock, could you end at 1? And we usually ended at 1:30 because the cafeteria stopped at 2, so we had to go and get to the cafeteria. And frequently the whole class and I would eat together. A class of about 40 at that time, and now we're up to about 60. And so that's kind of my first experience over the last 11 years with what we call the Beijing International MBA that's offered at Peking University. It started as a consortium of Jesuit schools, everyone but Georgetown. Isn't that what we usually say? But and now actually, after our 10-year contract ran up, we were the first private MBA in China authorized by the government. And when our contract ran out and kind of through a 15-year period, now Florick University in Belgium it confers the degrees to the students, as well as Peking University. So now I guess I'm working in China for a Belgium university from my Creighton position here. We thought this was so much fun. We also started a study abroad trip. 3 other faculty and myself started a study abroad trip to China that we've done 5 years in a row. And we've gone to Hong Kong, to Shanghai, to Xi'an, and to Beijing and on different trips. We kind of shake it up a little bit. And I saw one of my past students 2 days ago. She's in law school here. She said it was the best educational experience she ever had. So from that basis, I am interested in being here today.
Briefly about myself, I'm today for the panel as the moderator, and I was born and raised in China, and always interested in the country where I am from. I'm currently a professor of political science at Creighton, and also share the responsibility for the AsianWorldCenter, which is now holding the Asian Culture Week, the 9th Culture Week. As a political science professor, I always feel that I'm in a very unique position to teach Chinese politics. But economic factors, it's a very, very important factor in political changes. So I'm very honored to have great panelists today for this forum, which we will continue on special occasions, focus on different subjects. But now, since I'm the moderator, I'm going to throw out the first question to Jennifer, who is actually a business lady, owns a company, although it's not for the nail business, but for the roof business. Jennifer, do you realize that there's a number in China or in Asia which we regard as fortune? What is that number?
8.
8. Anyone knows that there's an 8 right among us or in front of us? What is the closest number, the 8 that you feel that you can see? I'm sure that some of you already know. Creighton. Creighton. There is a number 8 in our name, and I checked the whole world. Our university is the only university which carries the number 8. So it's a great fortune. It's a great fortune because Jennifer can tell a lot of things about this number 8. Would you please say something about the 8? Yes, please.
Okay.
You can sit down. You are very tall, so it will be wonderful.
Well, yes, Dr. Zhang definitely, highlighted this. 8 is very, all the business people in China, when they want to obey a cell phone number, they want to have an 8. Best to have 888, like all the number is 8, but that's very rare. And then they want, if they buy the car license, they want an 8. 8 is the same pronunciation. I speak Chinese, Mandarin, and Cantonese. They all like ba, fa, like it's meaning of a rich, like grow big. So that's, make 8 is such a special demand number in the business world that people want to just a good fortune.
Thank you, David. Yes. The 2008 Olympic Games, what day it was held?
That's also August.
August 8 p.m. 8 p.m.
So they want to do everything. Is 8. It's just to consider lucky and rich fortune.
Yes. So we are very, very lucky that we have a number. So considering China's rising, my first question following the number 8 scenario, do you consider China's rising as a blessing to itself, as China, 1.4 billion people, and also as a fortune or lucky thing to the rest of the world? Because I projecting China as a threat, we will talk about that. A competitor, we will talk about that. But let's consider, since 30-some years ago, the 500 million people were left out of the property, and everybody enjoy a good life. And if you see the YouTube, there's lots of clips about how Chinese people enjoy life. But at the same time, it grows very strongly and imposes some kind of regional threat to some distributed areas. On the whole, China's rising can be seen not only as a fortune to its own people, but also to the rest of the people, the world. Do you agree with me, please? Yes, Marisa.
Okay. Well,
No, you can sit.
I sit down. I will talk about this on a non-academic basis, but I think that China's rising has brought opportunities for the United States, for businesses in the United States. I've mentioned, Valmont Industries or Gallup. There are companies in Greater Omaha who are, doing business in China. They have manufacturing facilities. They have sales facilities. As their business increases globally, they're still adding jobs in their headquarter offices to support all of that global growth. You also can look at that in terms of Omaha companies who can export their products, to China and increase their global sales that way. Certainly, we do hear a lot about threats to business and economic threats, and I think that like any sophisticated relationship, the economic relationship between the countries has a lot of layers, but there are positive opportunities to be had for those companies who are interested to further engage in global markets in general and the Chinese market in specific.
I think the answer is yes. If you look at China's economic growth, just simply as its growth and not the nth order effects that may occur with that, they've helped Southeast Asia in terms of their trade. It's improved Southeast Asians in that respect. It's also helped a lot in Africa. They, for better or for worse, they're able to tap into natural resources and whatnot in Africa, and that can be good. It can also be bad, but it can be good. And then it also obviously helps American standards of living. It helps keep prices down, and that has a positive effect. Now, beyond that, there's obviously problems with China's economic growth that extend beyond that. But in terms of just their sheer growth, I think it's positive.
Let me repeat your question. Did you say that other countries should feel threatened by it, like the security? What was the exact?
All the perspectives considered, is China's rising a blessing not only to Chinese people but also to the rest of the world?
Yes, it is, because we are, as you mentioned, 500 people out of poverty. That's the story of our time, and it's one of the most underreported stories of our time. And you don't, hear about this in magazines and newspapers, and it's a big story because nowhere in the human history prior to last 30 years, a country, such a big country, has grown with a double-digit growth rate. It has never happened. So this is very unprecedented, and it's very unprecedented that so many people can now afford to eat protein, which is chicken and pork and all of that, not just once in a while, but maybe 2-3 times a week. That didn't happen either. So it's good for China. It's also good for rest of the country. And one example will be how much money China has saved to people like you and me every time we make a trip for shopping. Of course, there is the other side of that the jobs were lost. But the jobs were lost because China can produce that thing at a lower cost. And we have saved, I think the number is in a couple of $100 billion in last 10 years. And how much money was saved across in the United States alone, and I'm not talking about Europe and other countries. So that's number one. And number two, it's a good thing because China's rise means China is going to get integrated with the rest of the world. If 1/6 of the humanity is not isolated and it gets integrated with the rest of the world, how can that be a bad thing? So I think, for me, it's the upside, not the downside of this whole phenomenon.
Why don't we continue with the upside, and then maybe later we could all put in a downside. To add just to this discussion, to which I agree, it's also about global diversification. If you looked at industrialized countries in the Asian area, we're looking at Japan and South Korea. And now if you start to add in China and India, we start to see, and you kind of alluded to this, and you of course mentioned Africa, and I look out here and I can see some Latin Americans. As this diversification of productive capacity and consumerism continues, it, I believe, will increase the standard of living on average in the world.
Yeah, I would like to add a little bit on top of Marisa said, economical-wise. Well, this coming month, including the early October, we're going to receive about 10 delegations. But all these delegations, besides on top of meeting government official, looking for the environment, possible investment in Omaha area or Nebraska area, they always want to shopping. Because of the economy getting better in China, so the middle class in China get more powerful. They have very powerful buy power. So every time they come, buy 5 Coach bag and 5 mini pie, just give us a gift. I mean, that's how they like it. They like prestigious stuff. So the Valma sales that day probably 10 times more than before. So yeah, just we enjoy that. Definitely, that they also contribute a lot to Nebraska, economic in that way too. Besides on the investments.
Wonderful.
Yes, I would like to say from my personal growing experience in China. So when I was a little kid, I have an elder sister, and my family found it quite hard to make both ends meet because our family has 2 kids, and during my childhood, I hardly went to the theater to see a movie, and there would be not sufficient money for my mom and dad to pay for our daily use. And we do not have a house of our own, and we have no cars. But 30 years later, when I grow up as an adult and I have my own job, and we have kids, I have a daughter of 4-year-old, and we can almost pay everything that she would like to have. And we have a house of our own, and we have a car. So I think through my own experience, this is kind of to some extent a blessing for the majority of Chinese people to enjoy the material success or the so-called reform, the outcome of the opening up reform policy. But in other aspects, there will be many social problems arising from this kind of economic growth. And I can talk later about that.
On the side note, that actually Dr. Yu is well to do enough that he is here for the visiting scholarship period, and he brought his wife along with him. His wife actually is in the audience, so what a wonderful thing that we can have the money that means to bring her just for 1 month vacation. So we wish both of you have a wonderful time here.
Thank you.
Good. Now I'd like to open up to the floor because some questions raised by my class are very, very wonderful. I really feel very happy that education means to get our students open up their eyes and to know what is the real world is. So I'm going to ask Brian, would you please raise a question? Because you did a wonderful job for the assignment.
All right. One question I had, do you believe that China is about to face a real estate crisis? And if so, what do you think the global effects will be?
This question is quite pinpoint to the real estate. So, John, do you have?
My biggest concern is the entire infrastructure. Okay. I mean, we talk in the United States about the Gini coefficient, perhaps too technical a term, the disparity between the very rich and the very poor. In China, it's huge and getting huger. And I'm very, very worried about water. And you can take that to sanitation before you ever go to oil and electricity, before you ever go to real estate. And if the specific question is about a slump in real estate prices, is that the specific question? Most resilient market I've ever seen, especially in Beijing, which is my biggest exposure. I would just say I've been going there 11 years, and I've heard that it's going to be a recession in the real estate market every year every semester that I'm there, and we're still waiting for it. So these other issues, and if you want to add in their huge Muslim population and perhaps some religious issues as well. I think those things will impact way before the real estate might be.
I think one reason that it's a very resilient market is that if you are a Chinese person in China, if you think about investment, you don't have the kind of opportunities that you have in the United States. In terms of the stock market, in terms of the interest rate you're going to get, you're not going to get the, well, right now interest rate is nothing to, talk about when we talk of the United States, but at least it's the market rate. In China, your bet is to invest your money in real estate. And if that's your big sort of, portfolio and everybody's investing in there, then, that kind of becomes the only game in the town. And that keeps the market, kind of going. So I think that's my take on the real estate market in China. But I agree that it's pretty resilient as of now.
So to piggyback off of both points, I would raise three issues. First of all, if you look at rural economic growth since the 1980s, Deng Xiaoping tried to improve the lives of farmers and peasants in China. Once he died and you had new leadership, that emphasis started to dissipate. The result has basically been that Gini coefficient, that disparity between the rich and poor, is actually not only expanded to the up, it's also gotten worse from the peasant side of things. The second thing, we talked about the Yellow River and the Yangtze River being the two major rivers in China. Well, most of the Yellow River is polluted at this point. I think I want to say it's a third of the river. The last third is polluted. And then the last thing I would mention, when it comes to the real estate market, it's hard for Americans, I think, to understand the abstract poverty that existed in China for a long, long time. So when you're a young man and you're trying to find someone to marry, one of the things that you're pitching, especially with the one-child policy, with the gender disparity that's growing, when you're trying to sell yourself, is that you have an apartment or you have a home or you have some kind of place to live. And so what you end up having is almost like this, it's arms race, I suppose, but it becomes an exponential increase in terms of the cost of real estate. So like you were saying earlier, I don't know when or if there will be a real estate crisis, but there are obviously a number of problems that can be associated to real estate.
Jennifer, please.
Yes. I would like to talk more about the real estate. Like 15 years ago, 15, when I, working, travel back and forth U.S. and China. At that time, seems real estate in China, it's not as an open market, just the price is still low. So among these 15 years, I think because of the real estate, so many billionaire become that because the house is 20 times more. So, and I have to agree with Inju is that I think people in China, because we still cannot own the land. Land is still always belong to the government. So, but in Chinese people, we always want to own piece of property, even though we cannot own the land yet. It's a 70 years contract. I don't know how they can figure out in the future what do you do after 70 years. But so then, so the people still wanted to own the property, condo or house is very limited, because due to the population. And then yet, right, if you have a son, when you have a house, and then it seems easy to find, spouse. So, but on that end, I think residential house seems in this day, even all these 15 years go by, still lots of new buildings and still in very demand. The price still steady. Even the government, federal government has so many rules say, hey, you cannot buy 2 houses, more than 2 houses. You cannot lend money in this, but house still in very good demand. But during the last trip I went with Marisa and a government official in March, we drove by a few so-called so-called ghost town, which means there's more commercial building, and they expect so many foreign companies come in, such as checking all these things, has no contract, but already put their name on there. Seems like they will rent in a place, but yet no, it's not. So it's just lots of beautiful, beautiful building, and it was vacant, so they call it a ghost town. And some you will also drive by some nice neighborhood, but building is half done, seems to leave behind. So yeah, we do see some possible problem.
I'm going to ask Dr. Yu your experience of getting your first house, I guess.
Yeah.
So how that really make you feel that having a house is a great thing, but at the same time, did you encounter any hard time or anything that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it cannot be called a house, but an apartment. So I'm now living in Nanjing, and the real estate of Nanjing is soaring high. It can be compared with that of in Shanghai and Beijing. So actually, many of Chinese people are now facing a serious problem of they cannot have enough money to buy an apartment of their own. And when I began to work in Nanjing in 2001, the average price of the real estate is around 6,000 to 8,000 yuan per square meter. And now the average price for the real estate in Nanjing is around 20,000 yuan per square meters. So during that time, because I just began to work, so I didn't think about buying an apartment of my own. But when I decided that I should have a house of my own, because I have my wife and my daughter, and we need an apartment to live, so I began to search for the house around the place of my university. And I had tried to, to buy some new apartments developed by some real estate businessman. But whenever I try to find a new apartment, I always get negative news about, the price of the real estate, rise immediately after it is open to the general public. And whenever the businessman who developed this project said that this house can be sold, and everybody will queue up in order to get a number which permits them to select the house from this building. So, and they even queue up from the midnight until the end of the next day. So I found it frustrated if I want to buy a new house because the price is soaring high. So I decided to buy a kind of a second-hand, so-called second-hand house. And also, when I was trying to buy this house, the price of this house, because I wanted to be the school that my daughter is going to attend. So, because I decided, I tried to choose the school, the apartment, which is kind of has a reasonable price, and also which can provide better education opportunities. Because in China, if you want to choose a good school, you have to buy the house which is near to the good school. So when I buy this house, I bought it at a price of 20,000 yuan per square meters. And the total amount of money that I should pay should be 170,000 yuan for this apartment which covers an area of 90 square meters. So we will have to have the loans from the bank, and we will have to pay for each month. We have to spare a certain amount of money in order to pay the loan from the bank. So I think this is a real serious problem for many of the middle class in China, because as you know, there's a burgeoning middle class in China, and the government always encourages them to spend more money instead of putting their income into the bank. So, but actually the soaring high price of the real estate and the medical health care and the education which used to be free for the general public, is now considered as a kind of business. And the government take the advantage of this chance to capitalize all these real estate, education, and healthcare to make more money. And the government actually should be considered as the most wealthiest organization around the world, which has make profits from the real estate. So and I think this is the real serious problem that we are now facing in China.
Well, China is a great country, but also sometimes a great country can also make great mistakes. So on that note, Scott, do you have a question on the general practice of?
Actually, yes. I was wondering. My question is kind of dealing with the intricate relationship of world markets, and maybe this is at an end game of trying to form a global economic society or what have you. What would be maybe the ups? And what comes to mind are the downsides. But if there are upsides, I'd like to hear them. About having such intricately woven not only economies, but when you're talking about the massive amounts of debts that are owed by specifically the U.S. and China, between the two of them, and when you're so connected in that way, what that can kind of lead to. And like the thing that comes to my mind is when I think of pre-World War I Europe, when you have all these intricate alliances, and so one little thing happens and it starts off a whole powder keg of other issues that may occur down the road. I was wondering if you could just talk about that intricate relationship between the U.S. and China.
Well, I'll start off. Oh, well, I want to do that. No, I want to go that far. But two things. First of all, your point about World War I don't think equates to this. If you look at the World War I relationships, they were more strategic in terms of a political standpoint, military standpoint. We're talking about strictly globalization. I think that there's a lot of deterrent value in that. If you look at the last 60 years or so, there hasn't been a conflict between major powers. Part of that is global economics. So I think there is actual value in that. The other thing I would, so I go with that. There's strategic value. And the other thing I would mention in terms of the debt, that's a two-way street. The Americans buy Chinese products, but because we buy their products, and they then turn that money into bonds, American bonds. If they don't do that, inflation goes up, and they have their problems. So. And this is one of the things that we talk about a little bit at Strata. Basically, at what point in time and you look at Chinese wage growth, at what point in time do American companies start investing elsewhere, and then it's harder for China to control inflation. So from a globalization standpoint, it's a deterrent, and then also there is a two-way street for the debt issues.
Professor Sindhav?
Well, I was thinking about all this debate that goes on about how much debt that is held by China and what it means, and that means Chinese own the United States and things of that nature. That foreign currency reserve of a couple of $1 trillion, which is, if you compare with other countries. They barely have a couple of $100 billion if they are big, but nobody is even close to China. And I'm looking at, again, maybe you call me optimist, but what's wrong with that? If someone is giving you cheap money, someone is lending you cheap money that you can invest in a productive capacity. I think they are doing you a favor, and they see strength in your currency. There is alternative currency available. Euro is there. But look at the Middle East. What currency they want to get paid in? It's going to be dollar. It is dollar in foreseeable future. So I don't see that as a bad thing that we are borrowing money from China. I think it's a cheap money, and we are putting it to good use.
Yeah. Marisa, would you please have something to say?
I don't know that I have anything really to add to what has already been said on the debt.
Yeah, if I were just to say it, and it's maybe synthesizing the first 2 points. If we're the payers to China's debt, China doesn't want to screw us around so that we can't pay off that debt. So there's a level of interdependency there that can secure peaceful relations, and that makes sense to me.
Okay, yeah, could I add something? Well, in my introduction, I also said I believe, maybe in between U.S. and China, politically, maybe we U.S. and China don't agree on many things, but economically, I think the both country goals is the same, and continually grow and benefit to each country. And also, China in general is very neutral, as in their nature is not trying to cause any, problem. I do believe these three panelists is that should be beneficial for both countries.
I know that there's many questions raised by my class, but I'm going to open to the floor. Please, Bob.
If I might, I would like two questions. One relates to what Jennifer said earlier, and then I have a question for the panel. Jennifer, I'm curious, and I have selfish reasons for asking this. Does it make a difference in terms of 8 in China if you're born on the 8th day of the month, or if you're born in the 8th month of the year?
Well, no, that's another, really, when you're born, they have a different calculation. So, for example, now they pick and choose dates, and the year, the month, the time, and which year of the animal, which we have a 12, each 12th year is a circle, and we have a different year of an animal. They believe some they like born in the dragon year, some they believe this year is not good. So it's not, if you say birth, it's not only 8. That's become more complicated.
Okay, obviously, I had asked that being born on August 8th.
Oh, 8. Wow, that's... Well, then if you go to a future tailor, and then you give the, those, then what time? When you born, what time?
So
which year?
I was born at 8 in the morning.
Oh.
1988.
You must be a lucky guy. And very, fortunate.
And this is for the entire panel, and because I know her best, I would like to start with Marisa. I'm very curious if you've noticed any change in the business climate, any way at all, since the new leadership took over.
I actually have not noticed a significant change in the business climate. Every trip that we take to China to recruit businesses, we are dealing mainly with business, sometimes government officials as well. But as a part of being, interested in the U.S., I think that interest has been fairly steady, or at least what has been expressed to me at the time. Different companies are obviously at different steps in their timeline of if they're actually ready to come to the U.S. or not come to the U.S. But it still does seem to be very much a sign of success if the business is able to come in and enter the U.S. market. So some people that we talk to, like I say, they've come over and invested, and some were still very early in the game. But throughout the years, that doesn't really seem to have changed too much.
I do agree with Marisa on the economic private sector business, but actually on the government official side, that immediately has changed quite a bit. Is they, for example, we have some government delegation wants to come, and in the past, they always have a funding that they can utilize to come. So now it become very strict. They want to see that this government delegation want to use the federal funding is for sure have to use it, or now it's just very limited, become more strict to spend government money. In the past, manufacture when all these government, they hold a different passport, like it's government passport. These people, when they go out, all paid by federal government. That's one thing. Maybe they also have some extra spending they can use, but now it's very limited. It's very strict, and each country manufacturer. Sometimes we believe it's not really enough to visit one country. They only allow the government passport holding people each country 4 days. Each in the past, you can stay 8 days or 10 days. I mean, so as big as the United States, we wanted them to come to Nebraska. Nebraska alone costs 4 days to just see all the place. So how can you see other part of it? It just really become very strict, but that's just the rule. For that, immediately affect in March. In fact, we have a few delegations had to get now approved to say our Chairman Xi say you can go, we approve you go, but at your own cost. So yeah, that's a major change that I experienced.
I think what I want to mention a little bit. It's a kind of a subtle change that you are seeing in the stance, and maybe that's because of maybe the time. Maybe China has arrived, but if you see United States President visiting China, normally they don't go directly to China. They go to sort of Malaysia and then Taiwan, and they kind of throw their weight around, and then they go to China, kind of sort of consolidating their bases. Well, what happened when Chairman Xi came here? He didn't come to USA directly. Normally, you will see previous visits, they do come directly to United because that's the destination. They first went to the Caribbean and Mexico. And they were all like, and Chairman Xi was like the Aunt Agony, and people were complaining that, United States doesn't care about us. So then you see China giving them $1 billion here, $1 billion there to sort of course, increase their influence. And then they come to Washington, D.C. to talk, and it's kind of, a very interesting gesture. So I think this is the first time I have seen it in this, in the new, this political leadership that you see. And I don't know what kind of repercussion that has for business, but definitely there is a more desire to exercise some sort of soft power, if you may. That's what I'm saying. It may not be a bad thing.
In California, is it?
DC, not California, yes. California, not DC, but by DC I mean the power center. Yeah.
I know that Professor Wingender enjoy staying, teaching in China, and Jennifer enjoy living in Omaha. But from each of your perspective, can you share with the audience that is there any, also Marisa, American businessman encounters something that they really do not feel comfortable, or Jennifer, you enjoy overall the experience here, but do you also have some frustrations in getting a business in the United States versus you know that businessman may also encounter some hard time in China? Can you show us this kind of perspective?
Is that to me? Okay. Well, I think there's obviously going to be differences in communication styles, in business styles, no matter where you're going, not just the U.S., just China. But I think there are some things that I was not expecting when I went over. Some of it is just communication style in general. Jennifer laughed because one of the first things that everybody asked me for years was, how old are you? Do you have a boyfriend? Are you married? Just kind of like, the soft things.
Well, by the way, I did not want to interpret it to her, but she know that, was talking about her, so I had to.
Yeah, I was like, what are they asking? They want to know how old you are. They want to know if you like Chinese men. Things like that. So those kinds of things I wasn't really used to. But that's kind of more on a personal side of things.
But did you answer your real age, or you just you did?
I did. I started saying 65 at first, but no one would believe me. So yeah.
In Japan, people never say I'm more than 29 years old.
I passed that milestone, unfortunately. But So just kind of some difference in interactions. I've found myself and some people in the business community here, it always seems to be a little bit last minute. The arrangements are sort of, okay, we'll probably do this, yep, we're doing that, and it's going to happen in 2 days. That's something that not only have I experienced, but I hear from businesses as well. So I'm sure you guys have more answers.
Yeah, just added to that because sorry, I just want to immediately. Well, because it's last minute, is that lots of things is really reverse, like between U.S. and China. Is that here, if you buy ticket at advance, that you get a better deal. In China, last minute has best deal. So like they just say, well, we'll come this and come. Yeah, just always 2 days ahead of time that they're coming because I don't know, maybe the ticket is last minute is always less. But well, I will have a more added later. You want to go ahead?
Sure. I would say one, if it's kind of on a personal note from teaching, when I started 11 years ago, China time was more like Indonesian time than American time. Punctuality. It wasn't. I had to make some special indications like locking the classroom at the start of class. If they weren't there by then, they weren't in, so that we would be punctual. And about, if I'm teaching 200 students now, about 90% of them are Chinese students. So, but over the last 11 years, punctuality has really changed. Mass starts on time, class starts on time, meetings start much closer to the on time than 11 years ago. And I don't know if that's universal or if it's just the situation I'm in. And even in Beijing, where there are huge, massive transportation, traffic jams and can delay anybody, with the big increase in the subway system, 10, 20 times bigger than it was 11 years ago. Much more on-timeness, punctuality. That's a huge change that I've seen. I was thinking about changes that maybe affected me over time with the new regime. Now, in the old time, I used to have to, what's the longest visa I think I could get 11 years ago was maybe 6 weeks or 30 days, and I taught a 6-week class, which made it a problem. I do remember going to the airport one time when they said to me, your visa's out of date. You should have exited already. And I said, well, then I better leave. And let me leave.
Probably to penalty you, right?
The penalty, yeah, I didn't have any money, sorry. But now I can get a visa for a year. Okay. Now, I think the instructions are much more restrictive in the regulations, but I can't read Chinese, so it doesn't matter. So I get it for a year now. That helps me. On the other hand, when we do our study trips, each year we bring in businesses, like Nebraska businesses that do work. And I'm trying to angle here to get Jennifer to come in this year now right away. And we have, for example, Belmont. Anybody here from Belmont, work for Belmont? Just as an example, they've been in China for well over 15 years. And I think they told me the story of 15 years ago they had $5 million in sales, and last year they had $5 million in sales. And their restrictions and regulations have just increased and increased and increased. And internal domestic competition has increased as well, which is what we've seen. And I'm not sure that's a change with the current regime, but that was a really good question. And I am pandering to the audience here a little bit.
Yeah, I would like to add. Well, just because Dr. Zhang asked, I'm the business owner, I would like to share how my business, start brand new business in Omaha. And also that I would like to say, Marisa added mentioned in her introduction, is we bringing quite few successful Chinese company located business here, so they also experienced some difficulties, such as visa always an issue for them, and different way to do business is always just culturally it's a different. As much as Chamber Omaha and our state try to support, is just it's a brand new market for them, and sometimes just they facing lots of culture difference. So for my experience, that start brand new business here, and especially selling commodity, very competitive market, is that I feel very fortunate. U.S. market is I want to say it's a very fair market. As long as you work hard, you try to approach the customer, you try to be honest, trustworthy, and I believe you will have a share flow. Versus in China, that I think maybe you can quickly become rich if you find the right product, because it's a special, still a very developed market. You have a great opportunity. You can overnight become rich. But in U.S., I believe just study, grow your snowball. It is more of the things that I believe that unless you really invent some like a Facebook or some just a great IT tool, and then you can be overnight rich. Otherwise, studying what I do is just to build a snowball, slowly grow and share the market.
This panel lasts 2 hours, but time goes fast. We have only 40 minutes left. So those who have to leave, please leave quietly. But I hope everyone stays here because we have more exciting questions also. Jennifer, may I add in one quick input and also question? Do you have to find the right person in China to do business?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. The guanxi is always most important in China. Is in here, people just say, you don't want to find this. You just seems you go to the right place, that's fine. But in China, you really just have to know the right person. When you find a job, you change a job, you go to sell something, it's just always guanxi. And giving a gift is still a very common business practice in China. You're just giving gifts when it's a holiday time or when you try to start a business or something. Yeah, just guanxi is most important. It's who you know.
It's who you know. I'm going to ask Garrett. You have a wonderful question. Would you please share with us?
Yeah. It seems like the academic consensus is that.
Speak up, please.
Yeah. It seems like the academic consensus is that China's corruption and lack of government transparency will prevent China from becoming a world superpower in the near future. Is this accurate? Will they be able to carry on without opening up politically as an economic power?
Are you asking in terms of, when you talk about superpower, are we talking economic power or like political, military kind of power?
Both.
Both? Well, I think the answer for political, military is yes. The answer for economics, I think, is almost certainly yes. When you talk about the military side of things, and politics and military, they're intertwined. So, the Chinese bought their first carrier last year. So what did the Japanese do? They ended up building what they called a helicopter craft. So basically, it didn't have the catapult, and it didn't have the rope that catches the planes when they land. But other than that, it was a carrier. So the Chinese over the last 8 months did some really significant space tests. All right, the last one occurred shortly after the Boston bombings, so it wasn't widely reported or anything of the sort. But one thing I would point out with that is that if you recall, right around the same time was when the North Koreans were ramping up their provocative statements. That was, we had spent years coming up to that point, and all of a sudden, right around the time the Boston bombings occurred, they stopped. Okay. Now, that could have been coincidence, maybe not, but if you look at what the Chinese were doing at the same time, they were spending millions and millions of dollars on some certain tests. So, in my mind, you look at that and then the carriers and then what they're doing in Southeast Asia. There's a number of incidents that have occurred lately with the Philippines and Vietnam and those sorts of countries over shipping lanes, over who owns what waters. And so that is all getting at their power. Even something along the lines of the fact that they're building a port in Pakistan is significant in terms of what kind of power projection they're able to do. So the long and short of it is yes. They don't need to open up in order to power.
I think, the Communist Party of China, I mean, that's what you're talking about, the corruption and being transferred. Things are, I think, maybe they are changing slowly, but things are changing because I think right now, if you see it, this is probably second time that a member of the standing committee in the Politburo, I mean, that's a very, very powerful body. And within Politburo, you have a standing committee. That's a very powerful body. Member of that is now brought under the investigation. That just doesn't happen in China. It didn't happen in China. So it's a very relevant, and I think the message is being sent. Maybe some people say that, it's Chairman Xi wants to project his own personal power, all of that. But message is being sent that nobody will be spared or, will be really, really tough about this. And so cynic people do say that, Chinese government went up to Glaxo recently, that they are kind of, making an example of the foreign companies, but they are not taking care of their own backyard. But I think, if you took the example of Bo Xilai, the case that is going on, I think all those cases are kind of, now kind of showing that, China is, the government is worried about what is their perception in the larger public, because the number one concern is CPC should be in power and stability. Stability is really, really in the top in terms of what the concern is, and the people who are from China can probably add to that or comment on that. But CPC should be in power. That's number one. Number two, the society should be stable and harmonious and all of that. Those are the concern, and the economic growth that we are seeing is part of the deal, where the stability is maintained when people are not poor, when people have economic growth. So I think it's part of that deal.
So you think it's like the people kind of forcing the hand a little bit of the
Yes. I mean, because another thing that happened recently was, I think in the south, Guangdong, for the first time, the state government said, okay, we are not going to put the nuclear plant here. And those kind of things did not happen before. At least we are talking about almost $5 billion worth of investment. Think about the number of jobs, the economic development, this, that. But probably 1,000 people were on the street and demanded that we don't want this to happen. And the government said, yes, okay, we hear you, we are not going to do this. And I think that's another thing that you are saying, that government is kind of, becoming sensitive to people's, sentiments and what they are saying. So I don't think that, China or the CPC as someone who is in ivory tower and they have iron hand, iron fist. I think they are also becoming sensitive to this as
I'm not saying they were. I've heard stories of them kind of lifting up. But I was just wondering if you, because it seemed that a lot of scholars compared the USSR to China and stuff like that. When the USSR opened up politically and economically, it just crashed down kind of thing. But then it seems that a lot of officials in China kind of recognize this, and so they're opening up economically while trying to keep the social, political.
You're exactly right. They actually did a study.
Do you think they can get away with that though? Yeah. If they wanted to, would they be able to retain that political control for a long time and become a superpower, or would you think it's necessary to relieve that or to give that up?
They are doing something that Russia did not do. They actually had a consultant team that went out and studied, because they were really worried about what happened to Russia. That if it happens to Russia, then it can happen to us as well. And the result of the study, whatever it was, we don't know. But one of the things was the media was opened up in Russia. China doesn't have open media. Yeah. They have open media as long as it's not political. If it's a politics, then it is very much controlled. If it's not politics, then you do what you want to do. I mean, in fact, it's just phenomenal the kind of way the whole cultural spectrum has opened up. On TV, for example, having maybe Chinese Idol or Chinese Got Talent or those shows and all of that, that's fine. So Russia did something that China doesn't want to do, and China wants to go slow. Russia did it in one go. China is what I think Chairman Deng, not Chairman, he wasn't, I think Chairman Deng, he said that we want to cross the river by filling the bay. So taking one step at a time, very slow, and with patience. That's something that Russia didn't do. So I think those are the two major points. And of course, the third being Russia had tycoons and mafia. China, they cut to the size. They don't want anybody to be growing bigger than that person is. They have that thing that Russia doesn't have. So they don't want to have the alternate power of center. with business lobby, this, that, and I don't think that will happen in China.
So you must encounter or come across many students who actually become Communist members during their school years. What do you think about those young Communist Party members in your class?
Well, I hope you all smile at this example. The one communist member that was in my class, I remember in 2006 we were talking about investments. And as the Shanghai Stock Exchange Composite went from 150 to 3,000, 1,500 to 3,000, and then 3,000 to 6,000. It was pretty easy. Everybody knew that if you were invested in stocks, it increased 100% per year. I mean, that was what it was going to be the next year. And when I mentioned that there might be a certain amount of risk in that, by the way, it's 2,000 now, just to give you the punchline. One of the guys that never talked in class raised his hand and said that will never happen because the government will never let it happen. And I looked at him and I wondered who he was because I'd never seen him before. On every other class, he'd always had his driver come in, and his driver took notes. And I think his driver did really well in the stock. I never did figure out whether he took the final exam or his driver did. So that would be one of my examples. But I don't see a lot of people going into the Communist Party who are young. There are some members, and they're pretty quiet in class. One Communist Party member said to me, whether we're capitalistic or whether we're socialistic, when you cut open my blood, Confucianism runs out of my veins, arteries.
I'd like to touch on the environment a little bit. That's because you talked about the pollution. I understand in Beijing it's miserable, it's bad. And they're redirecting rivers because there's no water in the north, there's water in the south, and so the environmental impact, it may not be evident for a decade or so, but look half a century down look at 50 years away. What's going to happen with all this growth, and if they keep building highways and people, the affluence, and everybody wants their own car, just like the U.S. and that. No.
Everybody knows the carbon emissions. Which country does the most carbon emissions? We all say the United States, but China not only surpasses, but they got twice as much now.
And they burn coal for a lot of their energy.
So quick.
The Chinese, one of the things to mention is that the government is starting to invest in clean energy, and they're making efforts to try and get their carbon footprint down. But at the same time, another twist on it is their involvement in the Middle East and in Africa in terms of getting the resources that they need. The Russians are trying to start up this Eurasian Union as a counter to the European Union, and they're targeting a lot of like the STANs countries, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, all those. Well, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, for instance, they're like first and third on the number of migrant workers that go from their countries to other countries. They probably go to Russia, but their greatest partner economically is China. So, even though they have all these pollution issues, I think they are trying to offset it in some small measure. They're trying at least to make attempts, which is, at least a start.
Questions? Elizabeth, do you have a question? After you, I'm going to open, because this is my class. I want them to get the answers from the panelists.
One of my questions was, what is currently the cost of having an export-based economy, and what would have to change in order for the economy to become a little bit more self-sufficient and a little bit less focused on just solely exports?
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry. What is currently the cost of having an export-based economy, and what could be done if it's desired to be to change it to be more focused within the country?
Well, obviously, if you have export-based economy, which is what the Chinese government also realizes that it's intricately then connected to what happens to the rest of the world, because it's both good and bad. So they want to make it the domestic demand-driven economy, where the economy is driven also by the demand of 1.4 billion people. And that's not easy thing to do when 1/3 of the income people just don't spend. They just put it away, squirrel away, because they are worried about the old age and what will happen and things like that. So we'll see how it happens, because everything we are seeing with China is almost first time happening in the history. So there is no precedent. So we'll see that how that goes. I don't know the answer.
When another Southeast Asian country does something that they don't necessarily want, one of the things they'll say is that you've upset 1.3 billion people, and that's getting at economics. So it's a double-edged sword, because obviously if you're an export-based economy, you rely on the pricing from other countries. But at the same time, if there's multiple countries that are selling you the same good, you can dictate how those countries go about it.
Well, yes. Like the doctor mentioned earlier, is that China do want to take slow one step at a time. Actually, lots of export stuff is already less than other countries. For example, Vietnam or Cambodia are doing lots of, for example, Walmart's orders and stuff. China labor is not cheapest anymore. And then country-wise, as a leadership, that also try to slowly how to, based on 1.4 billion people, feed them first, and then how to transform to a different, maybe many years ago, Europe, more other industry, besides only export. And also, that's just they slowly transform. And also in last year, I think beside the dollar-wise, U.S. import from China compared China import from U.S. actually is China dollar amount is more. So China imported more stuff from U.S. than U.S. imported from China. So that's first year ever. So also example is slowly changing.
Yeah, one of the ideas you can think of is, instead of having $3 trillion equivalent dollars in reserve, they can take those reserves and invest in infrastructure, which will be mostly, the labor will be supplied by Chinese. Those Chinese then have wages. Those wages lead to internal demand for consumerism. And then you start to have more of a consumer-driven economy, which they hope that then will lead to more of a service-based economy. That's in the current 5-year plan. Than now manufacturing economy. So if you look at the U.S., we're say 70% service to 30% manufacturing, and they're much more 80-20, and hopefully driving it the other way. Does that help?
Yes. I'm not in your class. No. actually, I am. I just haven't shown up for any of them.
You sent your driver.
Yes. One of the trends in American business, and this has been a factor in American business for a long time, but one of the things that you're really seeing in American business now, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're with a small, medium-sized business, whether you're with a Fortune 500 company, is the emphasis that is put on, if you want to be successful, having a mentor. This is a very, very dominant theme in business right now, is having a mentor. Is the same sort of thing happening, or do you see this same sort of thing happening in China?
So, yeah, like I said, I used to work for a Hong Kong-based company, but we have a main office, and so at that time, 15 years ago, they already hire, top dollar money, hire professional maybe speakers, coaches. I don't know if that's what you mean, trying to, educate the employees that how to do business, what's the international businesses. That's what when I was in this Hong Kong company is that they are doing, like business coaching kind of things. I don't know if that's what you...
No, a lot of times in American business, the term mentor and the term coach are used equally. So that coach would be coach, yes.
Can the moderator answer the question also?
I mean, if you actually think about it, that's a good question. If you think about it, the one of the most protected sector that China has is the finance. It's very difficult for the investment bank, for example, to have 50% equity or something like that. They just don't allow it. But they allowed it in mid-90s, and even today they allow that kind of thing because they want to have that mentoring, where the American person who has honed his or her skills on Wall Street comes to Shanghai and teaches these Chinese executives that how do you run a modern finance operation? How do you go about, having offering the equity, and those are the things that China really, really wanted to learn, and the reason they allowed, joint venture and all of that in that sector they really wanted to protect was, part of that was learning. They wanted to have this mentoring going on from American executives to Chinese executives. So I think that was a big
transfer of technology.
Yeah.
But regarding the mentor thing, Chinese people are very humble and moderate, and you love to have a mentor, a teacher. Some of you are, very familiar with me. I oftentimes say Adam is my mentor, Patrick is my mentor, John is my mentor. We regard someone is leading us, but it does not formulate a fixed relation that you have to listen to me. It is largely depend on the person who regards someone as a mentor. But follow Jennifer's point that you need to find the right person. Usually the right person is the mentor, but that relation can be also very dangerous. If you mess up with this mentor, your business could be in a bad shape. So, but I really appreciate the American way of things. There is principles to follow. There is a legal rules to follow. And that really relieves a lot of burden on our shoulders. But in China, oftentimes the human relations is a very important aspect of your business successful stories. So that's also an ethical question.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
As far as coaching goes, when we bring over clients from China, we end up on their visit pretty much providing educational opportunities or coaching opportunities for at least the first few days, putting them together with bankers to talk about how the banking system works. How can you establish a line of credit for your business if you don't have a credit history? Kind of issues like that. With attorneys, with HR consultants to say, actually, no, you can't say the best person for this job is a 23-year-old young woman. You have to, open it up a little bit and really try and give them a better idea of how the systems are going to work in the United States. So I don't think we provide necessarily a mentor, but we do find that our clients are very receptive to having the opportunity to sit down with the experts in those fields to learn about what they need to do going forward to follow those systems and rules.
Yeah, I'll answer it from more, having had thousands of students, MBA students who have graduated. I would say that not very many of them have found mentors in their businesses where they've been hired. If they did have a mentor, it's usually a multinational global business that has mentoring as part of their core values and strategies. Very unlikely in a domestic Chinese company to find that. So hopefully that's our next big import or export.
But you said Chinese students very humble. When I have a Chinese student in my class, when they submit the assignment, it's always like this with two hands, hold like this, and then submit like that.
Also, we're trying to make, we always call, don't call first name as much. We always put, Chinese always put a title,
even the vice or deputy is still called a full title.
Yes, it's just to show the respectful. It's very humble.
But I still love my American students. Sometimes they didn't turn their homework at all. And then yeah, Robert, please.
I need to stand up because I'm quite shorter than a lot of
You are not.
On the topic of mentors, actually, I have the privilege of having Professor Zhang as mine, and among the things that we've talked about over the course of the year that I've known him, I remember one discussion being about actually Solyndra and China's role in what happened with that. And I'll bring it up in a second, but since 2007, China has given about $27 million in subsidies for steel. In 2009, $33 billion, the equivalent for paper. And since May, $24 billion for solar panels and solar waffles. And this has allowed the Chinese to produce products in the open market at artificially low prices. It's a two-part question, one from the small business perspective and also from a more macroeconomic perspective. How can you compete with that? How does that affect your business practices, knowing that you don't receive subsidies from the American government, maybe if you're a farmer, as much, and so that drives those prices down. And as a macroeconomic question, is that practice sustainable for the Chinese government?
Very good question. That's actually just in my industry. That when I started business in 2005, the government gave the local, because of roofing nails, they do nothing but nails, right? So they give every export. So I am a U.S. company. So I buy from this Chinese company. So then they can sell to me the price lower than they sell to the local Chinese. So obviously, you're right, U.S. company cannot, compete this price. And in the meantime, why the factory can sell below their market is that when I started business, the Chinese gave 13% of the, we call it a rebate back to the factory. So because then in 2006, the U.S. nails, they will have a few nail factories. They filed a lawsuit. So now that we have in the nails industry, we have anti-dumping law. So all the nails we bring in that they have a tax on there, and the Chinese government subsidized from 13% to 5%, because they just so they want to encourage, they want to have a foreign dollar. That's the purpose they're doing that, so they can have more of the U.S. dollars, and also helping the factory keep going and have a more sale. And I see from the China side, the government side is trying to encourage that. But I think they slowly changing it, but it still is each different category, they still give the rebate money to the factory.
And I think it's important to remember when she says to keep the factory going, it's to keep those employees employed. A big part of that.
Have you considered staples?
Interest.
Well, yeah, I do sell staples too. That's also my product. Yeah.
Please check the company's website. Very nice website, and also very good.
I design one myself. It's outdated.
I missed the first part, so maybe this was covered. But I'm just curious, and it came up just a little bit ago about finance, and I'm just curious to understand better how finance works in China. I mean, so there's a central bank, and then there's, as I understand it, there's 4 big banks that are sort of officially government banks, and then I don't know. Then there's like a lot of different Chinese banks, and then there's some, Citibank. Citibank's got a big building in Shanghai and stuff. But so I guess I'm wondering, especially I guess, what's the status of the domestic private banks? How they're related to sort of the 4, how they're related to the government, and what sort of the attitude is toward the big banks, around the world, U.S. banks, German banks.
Well, I suppose as chairman of economics and finance, I need to walk out here and give us a starting point. So my first comment is like many of my students go to work for banks, both Chinese banks and foreign banks that are operating in China, and they all pretty much have their niches carved out. Okay, it's not like everybody can have a passbook savings account in any bank that they want, and whether they can take dollars or foreign currencies or just yuan, that's also an issue here as well. It's been very much liberalized in the last 12 years, 13 years that I've been there, but it's still, there's a lot of restrictions on what you can do. While I start this out, and you guys can, and I want you to take pot shots at what I say, the thing that I think is still true is you don't know, for the banks, the local Chinese banks, you don't know if any number they report is true. You don't know what they have as deposits. You don't know what they have as bad loans. I mean, there's a number there. You don't know because you just can't trust those numbers.
Do you think that's a problem that we see in China in the business world?
Yes.
Remember the shadow banking issues that occurred this past June, where basically the government wanted to crack down on banking that wasn't being audited, wasn't being accounted for.
Right. So they were refusing interbank loans, right?
Yes, but he's in a different area.
Okay. Yeah. But so that was it's similar to that, where there's a lack of accountability.
I think this is an ethical kind of problem or question that we would like to pursue. How Chinese join the world market economy would also like to share the rules or implement the same rules. Is that anyone can answer that kind of question, that to play the game, follow the rules? Any problematic?
I guess to add to that, maybe from an educational perspective, is business ethics emphasized in the Chinese business education as much as, well, okay. It's questionable, which is mentioned here as well, I suppose.
Well, let me handle this very quickly, because we've been doing an American MBA there, and now we have a European MBA that's an American model. Ethics is highly emphasized and not widely understood by our own students.
That's completely true.
And I think you have to realize, we have talked a lot about intellectual property issues. If you have a society where everything was shared, where there was no, private ownership, from there now you go into private ownership, I think it comes from a different kind of starting point compared to, what you see in this country. And what we have seen, the Chinese entrepreneurs, you have seen the companies that were sort of, considered to be the typical pirates and take the design. But now those companies have become legitimate. I mean, they have learned from that. They have grown enough capabilities by themselves that they are now in the not in the Sharia side. And I think that for them that was, kind of a learning from what they saw and then moving ahead with whatever they have. So I think, it's not a black and white clearly that, because it is wrong here, it is wrong there. We have to see, where it all comes from.
Let me throw in another ethical example, and Dr. you might comment directly to this. We can't have cell phones in any tests that I give, because there would be a picture taken of the answer sheet sent to whoever, and they would be calling up, texting for answers, and that would be very acceptable because it was helping them pass.
In China?
In China.
And I have something in my, this is, I got it, it looks like iPod Shuffle. It is not iPod Shuffle, it's better than that, because iPod Shuffle doesn't come with FM tuner. This comes with FM tuner. So this was just outside the Apple store. I was curious. This was, in the Nanjing road in Shanghai, and I went to the Apple manager and I said, So what's your take on this guy who is selling it? This was in 29 yuan, so probably $5-6. So he said, yeah, I know he's selling there. And I said, so he said, but his market is not my market. I mean, the people who want to buy shuffle for $40, that market is not going to go and buy what he wants to sell. So we are after a completely different market. And he said that it's not like he's cheating people. People buying over there, they know that they are buying the fake one. It's not like he's cheating those people. He's just giving them something that they can afford.
Yeah, I bought my Rolex outside the Rolex store. I mean, it was a fake Rolex, and I wasn't a customer for a real Rolex, so it didn't matter.
Yes, Ken.
So, in the business aspect of agriculture, is there enough agriculture there to sustain the people?
No, 15% of the land is arable. I mean, if you look at the population of China, China doesn't have enough land.
Right.
And they have the priority that, we need to have the rice or the crop, they have the priority that they will be growing, but otherwise, it's going to be supplied by the outside world. And China is, we talk about, how people are now taking better, more nutritious food. All of that is not coming from, China itself. Some of that is coming from other parts of the world. Yeah.
I like to use this example. 11 years ago from the class I go to when I'm there every year to learn Chinese, and I haven't learned any Chinese yet, but one of my students owns this, language school, and I go there, and it would be about the 4th floor, and I'd look out and down, and 11 years ago, I'd see a Chinese man who would be in a squatting position, eating his rice and maybe some vegetables and fruit from the stand during his lunch break. Now I look out, and that same guy is there standing up and eating a McDonald's double Whopper cheese with double mashed cheeseburger, and in the same spot, same guy. He's a lot bigger now. That actually is a true, absolutely true story. And so the health implications from the changing diet and bringing in food from not local or seasonal or what have you, I think is huge too. Health concerns for the future.
Wonderful. Well, let's see. John, please.
I had a question about healthcare and kind of like the aging population. So, at least in the United States, you have Social Security. So, like, as you get older, there'll be benefits for that. And China has kind of a patchwork system kind of for that. As the population gets older, how will the economy be able to support an older population?
Very difficult question.
Okay. It's difficult for them to answer. It's going to be very difficult. I'd like to give an example of healthcare. Marisa, you ready to go?
Oh, I was going to say there have been more private companies gone into the market to sort of fill that gap. A local example would be Right at Home, which provides some health care, but some just senior care or assistance for people who need some help to stay in their home. And so I think that's an option. I know they have competitors already in that market, people who are seeing opportunities there.
So is the government not taking that as its responsibility then, just leaving it to private companies to do that?
I'm not making that statement. That's a good question.
And on top of that, there is a law for the children to take care of.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll say that at Right at Home, we our Creighton study travel abroad class, we go to the Right at Home franchisee holder in the Beijing every year, and we go to some of their places and just as a it's growing, it's competitive, it's a growth industry.
I'm looking at the technology side of it. That Philips, for example, they had China as a base to produce the very modern, ultra-modern medical instruments, optics, and MRI machine, or now the new one. And then they realized that they can produce that, they can't sell it over there. And there was a huge market over there because China has the 5-year plan, series of 5-year plan when the priorities change. So when the priority becomes healthcare, I mean, it's scary in terms of how much demand there would be, because Chinese, the government decided that we want to now upgrade, the hospitals, and then think about the number of hospitals or clinics and how much demand there will be for all the machines. So Philips was forced, in terms of looking at the demand size, to innovate and come up with the machine that was good enough and yet quite affordable, and giving the most of the benefit that you would get from the high-end machine. And that just, they wouldn't have done that if there wasn't a market of China, And they created that, and that helped a lot in modernizing, Chinese healthcare system, or at least the technology part of it. So I think it's a very dynamic thing that, the outside world is in China, and it's not only the outside world is benefiting, China is also benefiting by, whatever happens with these kind of innovations. And the best companies are those that know that how to tweak and make it the Chinese way. A real quick example, the only profitable company right now that is in the car rental business is a Chinese company. It's called Ehai. And Avis is there, Hertz is there. What do they do? Typical, like take the American model from here, which is you go to the airport, show your ID, take the car. Doesn't work like that in China, and I understand that because I am from India. It doesn't work like that in India either. What you need is a car with a chauffeur, because if I am an executive and I can rent a car, the labor is cheap. I can also rent a chauffeur, and if I'm an executive, I'm stressed out. I don't want to drive, particularly in Shanghai. Okay, and Shanghai is trust me, it's very disciplined compared to Mumbai. So Ehai, it's all rhyming. Ehai, what it's doing is you rent a car, it comes with the chauffeur. And they are the only company that makes the money. So you have to take a model and understand the Chinese market and tweak it to make it acceptable to that need and want. And that's what I'm saying that, companies are not doing. And it is becoming, it's a Shanghai, Mumbai, or Dubai, otherwise it's bye-bye.
Way to work that in. Your question is both elder care and healthcare question. And Dr. Yu, what do you see for your folks there? Or Jennifer, are your parents still there? Or?
Actually, according to the law, if he does not visit his parents within 3 months, he should be punished.
Every 3 months?
We're responsible
You're responsible to take care of your parents. This is the law issued a year ago.
Not like in America.
Well, there's a kind of tradition for Chinese people that the kids should take care of the parents, and there's a kind of a filial tradition for Chinese people. But I think that for general public in China, the urban people who are living in urban area will have better health care than those people who live in rural area. And also, I think there's a really kind of patchwork, means that for those people who have this kind of stable job, like who owns an iron rice bowl, they will have all the pensions, all the health care covered by the government, and also for those private-owned enterprises employees, they will have to pay for their own pensions and the health care insurance. So, and also for those underprivileged people, like migrant workers from the rural area to the large city, they don't know where to get their own, kind of coverage of the health care and pensions. And also, I was told one of the examples is that if you are going to stay in a large city like Shanghai and Beijing, and you pay for all your insurance in these large cities, and you go back, and you will go back to your hometown, like a very small town or a village. You will find it very hard to transfer all the money you pay for that big city government to your own hometown. So that's the problem. Yeah, and but basically my parents, they are the university teachers, so they got covered by the government officials, by the government concerning their pensions and healthcare. And we got covered by the government because we are university teachers.
One or two short questions, please, because I do want to ask a tough question for each panelist at the end. So any one or two short questions, Adam, please?
I would like, in this academic world, we've had a lot of emphasis on art and music and literature, and it's enlightening to me to see the business world come to fore. And it's just the questions that are asked and the answers that are given are enlightening to me. I love it a lot.
Thank you very much, Adam.
I think there is a social good in business. Now, there's a lot of criticism of business, as we all know, whether it be monopolistic or cheating or corruption or whatever all that is. They're parts of it. But in my opinion, overall, business is an economic or is a social good.
We believe that too. Since this kind of panel, Xiaoqing, please. Xiaoqing is a visiting scholar from China.
Actually, I came from China, but I'm always confused by the exact definition about the middle class. No, actually in China, the middle class, maybe they can afford some luxury brands just like Chanel, LV, or Gucci, but they cannot afford their condos, so which made them very worried or they don't feel stable. So I suppose maybe in China they have another kind of definition of middle class. So I really want to know what's the exact definition of middle class in China, and I want to know your opinions about this.
Different
definition. So what's the definition of a middle class? So like a middle class of China and middle class of the U.S. is I think it's a different. Middle class in China meaning upper. It's become like you have a car, you have your own condo, you very I think consider it's quite successful, but not like super, not like a billionaire, but it's 小康，就是小康家庭。
It's a good question, but answers will be much better actually. Also, it's different.
Yeah, I know it's different, but my question is just like most of the people in China, maybe they can buy a car or even buy very luxury brands, but they cannot buy a condo by themselves. That's my So.
I think if you look at USA, I mean the average household income is like $44,000 or something. China is let's talk about just Shanghai, $12,000 probably on average. So in Shanghai, maybe $7,000-8,000 per year, US dollars per year could be middle class. I don't know. In other, I know in India it will be something like again in India there are different regions. Probably $5,000 per year. If you make $5,000 per year, you can afford those services and a maid that you can't over here. So, maid who comes with books. So, so that you can do with $5,000-6,000.
Also, I think when you say cannot afford a condo, meaning like you thinking you have to pay
in full, or maybe you can get a mortgage, because in Chinese concept, lots of time you just pay everything right away at all time. But right now, I think government also, like if you have a good salary and stuff, they give mortgage. So
yeah, just like I came from Shenzhen, it's opposite Hong Kong, it's very near Hong Kong, but I mean the average price of the condos in Shenzhen maybe over $500,000. Yeah, so actually most of the people I don't think they can. They cannot get a loan from the bank. Yeah. for most of the people there. So, but you know, middle class in the structure of the society, I suppose must be the foundation of this society. If they don't feel stable or make more trouble, just like that.
I think there's a widening gap. There's a widening gap between rich and poor in China, and I think there really exists a kind of problem with the so-called middle-class people. They feel a sense of insecure in terms of their future, their healthcare, and then their children's education. But actually, there's a high expectation from the government that the middle class should be the major group of people who can boost the domestic economy. But actually, they are very much concerned about a lot of things like their healthcare, education, and house. So they actually cannot be considered as this kind of a group of people who can really boost the Chinese economy. But I think for the U.S., this kind of the middle class will be the majority of the society.
Just on the middle class in the U.S., I mean, if you think, what's the median household wealth in the U.S., I think after the Great Recession is something like 130, 140,000. Median house is 220. New car is, let's say, in round figures, $20,000. So if you're a median household in the U.S., you have about half of what you need to own a house and a car and nothing else.
So your question is, how does it compare with China?
Well, we're comparing. That was more of a comment about what's understood by the middle class. So the median, in one sense, is the middle. Okay, so that's the median household. So in one sense, that is, by definition, the dead middle. And if you're in the dead middle household in the United States, you have about half of what you need to own a house in the sense of, you own it. You have all the equity, right? So you could have half the equity in the house.
Just one caveat. Owning a house in United States, particularly in a city like Omaha, is not same as owning house. Even in the second tier city, which is my hometown in India, like Ahmedabad, my house over here, there is no way I can afford it in India. I can probably, the same price, I can have a 1/4 size house. So if you the concept of PPP, power, the purchase price parity and all of that, it's just out of whack in terms of, the real estate price is really out of whack. So I don't think the house over here is comparable to house over there in terms of the multiple of your salary.
And we hear that all the time from people who are coming over looking at houses. It's nothing but shock that they get all this much space for this price. Even a house that I think is perhaps too expensive.
That's a good point, but remember, even between Omaha and Virginia or Virginia and LA, the housing prices are twice as much in some cases. So.
Anyway. But they still make money in dollar. Over here, they make in yuan and rupee.
So she asked a very hard question.
Actually, I'm going to cut out my questions to you. I was going to ask each panelist to have a problem that Chinese business world faces right now with a short solution, projective. And then you don't have to really say anything. It's perfect that the time is up. So thinking about that, this is what I'm going to ask my class also, after the Chinese classes on politics and government. What do you see China? What do you see a problem? One problem Chinese government or its people face in the current business world, and then come up with a short solution, if there is one. Anyway, today is the first time of this kind of forum, panel-based tackling questions and problems about Chinese economy. So we will do that again, and most certainly we will be honored to invite the same panelists to come to the panel, and then we will make sure that you will be thanked properly in the Chinese Asian way, but at the same time you invite the same audience and more audience to come to participate. We're going to tackling on the pollution problem, the social inequality problem, the parents-children relation problems, lots of problems that remain to be seen. But however, I thank you all for coming, but in particular, would you please join me in thanking our